Gold stars or lollipops?
So what has changed in 20 years? Todd, my brother, what do you think has changed in 20 years? I mean, they mentioned some things up here, but what has changed since 1998 in the state of Florida?
Lots of things.
Yeah. I'll give you the microphone.
Jackie thinks she's teaching at Murray Middle School. She's using the Socratic method. I have no idea what you're talking about, Jackie. What's changed since 1998?
What changed since 1998?
Of those things up there?
No, in the state of Florida.
Like everything. Like I said, everything has changed since 1998. You stop it, Jackie.
Okay, so,
There's a particular thing I was supposed to know.
no. What year were you born?
I was born in 1970.
In 1970. So, what are you most known for besides being a great lawyer?
Being Jackie Thurl.
No.
Being Santa Thurl's son. Maps and things like that.
Sorry to put you on the spot. What I was looking for is technology. My brother is a technology geek, and he helps me get all the numbers of the water coming out of the gates. And technology is something that has really changed since the 1990s. And of course, Florida is the third largest state in the nation. Florida is the third largest state in the nation now. So these are things that have definitely changed. The 1998 Constitution Revision Commission only got ideas from the public through letters or phone calls. Guess how we got ideas from the public? Email technology, and there was a website on the CRC. You can go just FLCRC and see all of the ideas people came up with. Daryl, guess how many ideas people came up with?
I know that question.
You do?
Yeah, 1,011.
Good. Over 1,011, and they really counted over 2,000 because they also took people's ideas at the hearings and wrote them down. So there were a lot of ideas. I'm going to skip that. Did it say that? What did they accomplish? I'm going to skip it. We're going to get too far running here. So there's Charles Baroof. See? He looks like a regular businessman. He's Cuban. And he's actually great. He's a great guy. And I think he was refreshing to be a leader because, I mean, you know all the awful things like when people are trying to do, like follow all of the rules in a meeting and everything has to be very formal. You know, he would kind of, if it ever got informal and people just needed to talk to each other, he would let them talk to each other. And I thought it was good. These are some of the public hearings that we did. Fort Lauderdale, Melbourne, Jacksonville, Pensacola, Cape Coral, St. Petersburg. They were all advertised. Thousands of people came, and we listened to thousands of people. The longest one was from 8 in the morning until 11:30 at night. The name of our tour was Floridians Speak, We Listen. And what you could find out listening to all the people, first of all, it was a total honor to listen to all the people. Number two, I realized there's a lot more problems than just the environment. And it's hard for me to say that because I fight for it and I love the environment so much, but people would come up and talk about things that I just couldn't believe it. And so it opened my eyes to a lot of the issues across our state on every level. I'm going the wrong way again. Oh my gosh. I wanted to talk to you here about what I did. I was terrified, I'll be honest with you. When Joe Negron appointed me, I said to Joe, I said, are you kidding me? You can't, I'm gonna be an idiot on this thing. I'm not gonna know what I'm doing. I'm not accomplished enough to be on the Constitution Revision Commission with like former state, senators and people who were in the House of Representatives and gigantic billionaire, business people. Who am I? I'm just Jackie Thurlow Lippish with a sailfish on my lapel. And Joe was so nice, he kind of laughed and he said, you'll be fine. And so as I got through the terror and I thought about it, I thought, I'm not an expert in a lot of things, but what am I kind of an expert in? And what could I fight for 100%? Come on. The environment. And so when I looked at those 2,000 ideas that people had put forward, I pulled out ones that were environmental because I thought I could help. Unfortunately, there wasn't one that said, let the water flow south, destroy the dike, and run right down to Florida Bay and recreate the sheet flow. That was not an option. And so the things that I chose were the following. Let's see. I should remember these, and I do, but it does seem like history now. The most controversial one that I sponsored was a right to a clean and healthful environment. Did any of you hear about that? This was unbelievable. I thought that U.S. Sugar didn't like me then, but when I did that, every big agricultural entity and every big business representative went against it. And I don't consider myself anti-business at all. I just feel like it needs to be done in a different way. But this would have given people standing in a court of law if you had questions about that you were being infringed upon by the environment. For instance, in the Tampa area, when the sinkhole fell into the aquifer and people's water was contaminated, some people will say, oh, it wasn't contaminated. Yes, it was contaminated. And if you were one of the people living in that area, guess what? You really had no standing. You had nothing you could say because the agencies kind of deal with it all, and the agencies have more standing than people. It's the truth. So the River Kids came up and spoke. It was incredible. Mom, can you stand up and say what it was like when the River Kids spoke?
It was so interesting to see that they really loved Jackie, but this had no hope, and they would say, you are passionate, and it was a privilege to take be with these two young people, and I got to go in Nick's place because she just got back from a big trip, and it was really enlightening for me. They were so impressed with these girls, these River Kids, and they had their little River Kid shirts on, and I thought, well, you should see them when they dress for the prom. It's quite different, but they were so you would be very proud of them. You really would, and it was just a wonderful experience. And these patient people on your commission, listening to everyone that goes on and
It was amazing, and I'm sorry, and I'll never forget Pam Bondi spoke up and told the River Kids, she goes, great job, and she clapped. And I thought to myself, even if this thing dies, which it did we make an impression? Yes. Will Pam Bondi and other powerful people remember who the River Kids were, who were talking all about the destruction of the waters from Lake Okeechobee, and that one day we should have standing in a court of law when we're dealing with the toxic algae coming through our waterways. Yes. So, not successful, but in some ways successful. The next one was a commissioner of environmental protection. This was an idea from Carlos Gomez in South Florida. And do we have an agriculture commissioner? Why do we have an agriculture commissioner if we don't have an environmental commissioner or a tourism commissioner? Where does the most money come into the state of Florida? Tourism. So this also was rejected, but got a lot of airplay. Clarification of Amendment 1. As you all know, Amendment 1 has been perverted by the state legislature, and the monies are not being used to purchase land, as was the original intent. We tried to clarify that. This was really a lesson for me. I'll be honest with you. This was from the other side. The environmental people started fighting amongst each other. And that's when I said, I'm out. You know, I did this to do something good. This was a recommendation by a citizen. But if you guys are going to fight about it, we're not doing it. And so I stepped out. I withdrew that proposal. And it was very hard, but that's what I chose to do. Florida Wildlife Commission and wildlife corridors. This would have given the Florida Wildlife Commission power over not just animals, but habitat. Because if the animals have no habitat, how do you have any animals? But this did not go over because of private property, and I understand that, but it made a lot of people understand the importance of wildlife corridors. A lot of the people on the commission had never even heard of a wildlife corridor. And so the thought of the animals being able to go without having to cross a road or a highway, hopefully those things will stick in the future. Now the final one was 91, no oil and gas drilling in the state of Florida, in our territorial waters. And this was brought by the members of the Florida Wildlife Federation. Not the commission, but the Florida Wildlife Federation. And I'll be honest with you, again, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, right, like me, the no oil and gas drilling person, But then I'm also thinking, who else on the commission can do it? And I took it, I sponsored it, and it was popular. And Charles Baroof, the person who was our chair, he liked it. And it passed through 2 different committees. And I thought to myself, this is remarkable. And along the way, I learned about how back in the 40s, 10 miles out in every direction from Apalachicola to Naples was leased to oil companies in the state of Florida. We forget this, just like we forget why we have a CRC. What ended up happening was around 2000, the state of Florida bought back those rights. And so now nobody's allowed to oil drill off our coast, and it's more prevalent on the west than the east because of the shallowness. So, what ended up happening, poor Toby back there, he's going to think like I hate the legislature. And I don't
That's why I'm going to change it.
I know, good. It's not that. It's just they are voted in to do the will of the people, not to do their own will, or worse yet, the party's will. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. Welcome to America. But, we got to keep trying to get it more fair, I think. Or not fair, but representative. More representative. So, even though they had sold back the rights to the, so no one could oil drill out there, guess what the idea was of the Speaker of the House in 2009, from 2006 to 2009. Remind yourself, we went through a terrible recession, okay? So if you were saying, God, we need to make some money, what can we do? We'll drill. Forget that we bought back the leases, we were done with that. We're going to tip it all upside down, and we're going to drill for oil. They were ready to drill for oil 5 miles off the coast of Naples. I mean, this is real stuff. It's documented. And guess what happened in 2010?
in Naples.
Guess what happened in BP oil spill. The BP oil spill, the worst disaster in the history, environmental disaster in the history of America. And so, of course, they're like, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. So they put it away. And I forgot to say that during that whole time when they were, buying back the rights and making it so they couldn't drill out there, the state legislature did put it in our constitution, did put it in our, in the state statutes, in law. They said no one's allowed to drill for oil. But we know, does it mean that no one's allowed to drill for oil forever if that's what the state legislature says? No. They could change that in a heartbeat. They could change that in a session. And so this was what went through. No oil and gas drilling in Florida's territorial seas. I was very happy that something that I did for someone who had an idea went through. And that will be on your ballot. But guess what it is bundled with? It's bundled with vaping. And I know you might be shaking your heads, but I can tell you, because I was there and I knew that the bundling was going to happen, right or wrong, it was going to happen. I was thankful that that's what it got bundled with. Because to me, it might seem like a stretch, but they are related in that they are both prohibitive. Prohibiting oil and gas drilling and prohibiting, it's not prohibiting vaping. You can vape, you just can't vape in an enclosed area. And yes, smoking is in our Constitution because of a citizens initiative in 2000, and that's why we have clean air and people don't smoke in restaurants. But some people are very upset by the bundling. It is my hope that you will look beyond the bundling and look for the opportunity to put no oil and gas drilling in Florida state waters, because I'm tired and I know you are too. But this is a legacy for all of us if we are able to do it. And it is also an environmental statement that we can make for the state of Florida. And then, if you start doing one thing, you can make more and more and more and more. The state of Florida has got to show that we don't just want jobs, jobs, jobs. We also want jobs in a beautiful environment. Jobs in a beautiful environment. So if you have any questions, I'm sorry I took so long, and thank you for listening.
How much farmland is there in Kentucky, east and west? How much is Florida, how much is US?
It's very confusing because you have the federal waters.
I didn't hear his question.
Sure. He was asking how many of the waters are the federal government's and how many are the states. The state has approximately 10 miles on the west coast, and it has 3 miles on the east coast. Everything beyond that is federal waters, and they could do whatever they wanted to with it. But if you are looking to protect scenic beauty, which is part of the Florida Constitution, you certainly don't need oil platforms in front of you. And if you don't think that that can happen here, you're wrong. It can happen here. And they would do it because they could and because it's money. And we need to say no. We need to say Florida is about our tourism industry, number one, and our beauty that brings us all here. And also, there is not that much gas and oil under our waters. That is documented. There's not. But would they do it if they could and try to find new technologies?
Yeah.
Absolutely, they would.
To what extent is the constitutional revisions precedent or controlling for legislation that happens Like the US Constitution controls the laws of the people.
It's a great question. Her question is, where is the Constitution in comparison with the state legislature as far as the law? Constitution comes first. So if you put it in the Constitution, they have no choice but to follow it. And some people would say, Jackie, oil drilling doesn't belong in the Constitution, it should be in the statutes. I disagree because I know the history, and the state legislature will never put protecting our shores first. And it's an opportunity for people to be above the state legislature, which I believe that our Constitution should be more valuable than the statutes as far as the law.
I lived in Pensacola for several years, and I can tell you that if you cross the line into Alabama, there's where they do a drill, there's all sorts of gummy black stuff all over the beaches.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I lived in Pensacola, and right over the border, right there, Mobile, there are platforms all out there, and they have been trying to drill right in front of Pensacola. In Pensacola, oil drilling is like our Lake Okeechobee, and it's a lot like that for the other areas of the West Coast.
I understand that the bundling was done by the Style and Drafting Committee, and there were 12 members of that committee, and 7 of them were appointed by the governor. So how was that committee put together?
When I got my chairmanship, I'm getting to your question. When I got my chairmanship for general provisions, I wrote down all the people on my committee and wrote down who appointed them. Most of them were governor people. When the Style and Drafting was also mostly governor people. And yes, absolutely, that is the way the politics plays out. And I don't believe that it was the governor himself. I don't. I'm going to be honest. I think I don't. It was the party. It is the party. And I am not against parties. I understand parties. People want their values represented in parties. That's fine. But it was just like the write-in candidate. That was one of these. It was put forward by Sherry Kleinel. It failed because the parties are so, I don't know the word. I mean, they're obsessed to control everything. And, aren't we all? My husband will tell you I'm obsessed to control everything. But sometimes it gets to be too much. And 27% of the people in the state of Florida are no party affiliation. No party affiliation. So what happens is in the primaries, just like with Style and Drafting or anything with the Constitutional Revision Commission, people are way extreme in the primaries. And if you're a candidate, you have to act totally whacked out extreme. But then, as soon as you're done with the primaries, and you're going to be in the general election, then you can act like a normal person. And it's the normal person, or closest to normal person, I know it's not a good way to say it, that will win. The person who is, that doesn't always happen. But this is the party situations. Some people disagree with me completely. I feel like we need to make sure that people have a voice. And there was a lot of complaints that it was mostly governor people, but I would not blame the governor, I would blame the party.
How many women?
Jackie, can we do one more question, a couple more questions, and then Jackie will be around afterwards.
Just repeat the question.
I'm going to let you give it to 2 more people.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
just wondered how many women were on this commission. You said 4 Democrats and the rest Republicans. What was the makeup?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was good. I mean, I think it was 14 or so. And also there were 5 African Americans. As far as background, it was a great group. If I were a hardcore party person, I'd say, oh, it was great that everybody was one party. But I know that the world is a better place when everybody feels like they have something that they can put on the table.
Jackie, Mark has.
Did you have one
Yeah.
other quick question?
Real short, I just want to applaud you for going and doing this and dealing with everything you dealt with up there.
I think we do. Thank you, Jackie, really, for all you've done. You look at how laws are made in Florida, and Jackie started back in the 1800s, and, it was a lot different then. And today, we have more than 20 million people in the state. It gets even harder and harder. So on this amendment, though, which just happened on Saturday, that we had Hands Across the Sand, which is a nationwide and even international Hands Across the Sand, people gathered around to try to stop oil drilling off our coast. So I put this in a simple format that you can follow. This is Article 2, Section 7 of our Constitution. And it's at the bottom is an underlined section that deals with this amendment. And I give it to you this simple format so you can look at it and follow it, and maybe you can pass them around and take a look at it. But it basically follows that our natural resources and scenic beauty are important to our state. And if you read that preamble and that general provision, just that one paragraph, our legislatures, each and every one of them, and all the candidates, are bound by oath to implement this Constitution, to stand by this Constitution. And it shall be made that they stand by this Constitution. And when you start reading that strong language in here, you hold our politicians accountable for it. We ought to hold the state legislature accountable for it. Our Constitution, as Jackie mentioned, is more valid than other things. Just like our comprehensive plan locally, we don't want to amend it. We don't want to change it if we don't have to. But when you have to change it, you have to put an amendment in there. It ought to be darn good and for the state benefit, for the benefit of the state. So when you read this bottom part that Jackie's put forward in this amendment that's coming up on the ballot on November, consider it, really consider it, that it does prohibit the drilling for, exploration, or extraction of oil and gas in our territorial seas. And I believe territorial sea boundary is from mean high water out to 12 miles offshore around the state. So you can really expand this boundary, but the idea is that it's not only the extraction of oil, and I've worked in the oil and gas industry in Louisiana and Texas for years, it's actually the exploration for it that's also the key. And the exploration for oil and gas, if you don't know, causes seismic testing. And seismic testing, I attended Blue Vision conference where a scientist brought out the actual seismic explosion noise that goes on every 5 seconds when they're dragging these things in order to explore for oil and gas in the substructure, and it's deafening. And you can't imagine what that sounds like to marine mammals in particular. And so just from the exploration of it, it's just a tremendous thing. So I hope you consider it. I just, again, applaud Jackie for all that she's done, and it's just a tremendous thing. Thank you so much.
She mentioned the Florida Wildlife Federation, part of this language. She takes a lot, put it this way, Jackie doesn't take enough credit. The Florida Wildlife Federation's had this language for 10 years and has been trying to get it in front of the legislature and get it through. So I'm a board member of the Florida Wildlife Federation, and Manly and our board or whatever, they are ecstatic that Jackie got this on the ballot and pushed through, because this hadn't gotten through the legislature for 10 years. That language was written, matter of fact, when Jackie talked to Manly Fuller, our president for the Wildlife Federation, it was hanging on the board behind him. It stays in the office in Tallahassee. They've been trying for 10 years to get this done. So, don't make light of what's on the ballot. It's very close.
When you read that, also read section 7B, which is the paragraph before the amendment. That was put into the Constitution by the 1998 Constitutional Revision Commission as number 5. And if you read that section B, it's about those who are in the Everglades agricultural area and cause pollution are responsible for the abatement and the cost for the abatement of that pollution. So read that section 7 and understand why that's not being implemented and why that's not, and ask your state legislature why the Constitution, Article 7B is not. So those are things that got in 1998, 20 years ago. There's another amendment proposed for this coming year, so thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Jackie will be around. I know some other people have some questions, but Jackie will be around after the meeting. Thank you, Jackie. Let's go on to our government agency report. Diane, I saw you at Martin County.
Greetings, Diane Hughes, Senior Ecosystem Specialist with Ecosystem Restoration and Management Division in the Public Works Department. We're no longer engineer. So, today, Mark didn't talk about water conditions, but I will for you today. The lake elevation is at 13.62 feet right now. 7 days ago, it was 13.20 feet, so it's gone up about almost a half a foot, 1.42 feet in 1 week. 30 days ago, we were at 13.22, and we were trending down at that time, and we're basically higher than that now. Last year, we were at 11.12 feet, considerably lower, and 2 years ago, before we had our toxic algae summer, we were at 14.29 feet. The inflows today into the lake were 5,402 CFS, down about 1,000 or so CFS from a couple of days ago. There's no flows coming into the St. Lucie right now from the lake specifically. I checked the S80 outflows at about 1 p.m. this afternoon. They were roughly around 2,000 CFS. I did talk to Todd Reinhold at the Martin County Health Department. He gave me the preliminary numbers for Enterococcus levels, and they are in the 400 ranges at Sanskrit Park, Layton Park, and the Roosevelt Bridge, which means they should be have signs being put up here shortly. He was going to resample today. If he gets good results, then they won't be posted, so we won't know until probably officially tomorrow what the levels are. So that's not looking good for us. And I saw some other things on Facebook about all the water lettuce that's floating all around the estuary right now. On our project updates for Martin County, although the estuary is not looking good, we just recently had our Martin County Blue Wave Paddling Trail officially designated as a state designated paddling trail here in Martin County. We have 37.7 miles of our 2 river systems, the Indian River Lagoon and the St. Lucie River. The Indian River Lagoon portion of the trail is 16.2 miles long and spans between Jensen Beach and Hope Sound. It has 8 different public launch or stopover sites along the trail, and there's a 2.6 trail spur that goes through the St. Lucie Inlet State Park. Then on the St. Lucie River South Fork portion of the trail is 21.5 miles and extends from the Atlantic Ridge State Park